Voy a streamear ahorita, amor. Empieza a pelear, niña. All right. Um, so earlier today, we implemented dynamic pricing based on the domain name. This is so weird. I left the YouTube video open and then I started hearing myself and it made me stop talking. That was so weird. So yes, I was saying earlier today I implemented dynamic pricing based on the domain length and sorry, the domain name and the name length. So as a reminder, we're building here the identity service or NIPO 5 service, to get an identity on Nostr Land. So maybe I should put something here that says exactly what we're building. Add some text here saying building Nostr Land NIPO 5 service. And then maybe move everything here. A little bit. Okay, so now I can put this on the side. Currently, we're generating an invoice on CBD, and I coded this, but I have not tested it. So that's the part that I need to. Well, I coded a class that lets me interact with CBD, but I still need to implement an endpoint that I can call, and then we'll generate the invoice. So that's the part where we're at right now. We're still generating the invoice on CBD. It's not complete. Yeah. So closing this here. This is the class that handles any interaction with CBD, and the two things that I implemented were a function to create an invoice and a function to get the existing invoice on CBD. And basically that returns back an invoice which I can then persist on the database. Um, let's see. So I don't think we have an invoices table. So we need to change that. One thing that I'm gonna do is, just because I wrote this before, um, yeah, I'm just gonna copy the migration from. I'm gonna copy the migration from the Nostream relay, and the migration is to create the invoices table, and then we'll just get rid of anything that we don't need. So I'm just gonna create a new file here, and let's put the date. So 2023-02-19, and the time is 7 p.m. But I used 24 hours. So that would be 193600, and then create invoices table.js. Gonna paste this, which I copied from Nostr, as I mentioned. Someone's talking to me. All right. 1 second. So I'm gonna share this link with Angela in case she wants to join. All right. Let's see. So we have the ID for the invoice. We have a pub key for the user that is creating this name or buying this name on Nipo 5, on our Nipo 5 service. We have Bolt 11, but I'm going to change that to payment hash, because that's the payment hash that people send around when they're sharing an invoice. That's how I'm going to store it. We have amount requested and amount paid, but I think I'm just gonna remove amount paid and just keep amount, just to keep things simple. Um, and then the unit can be just MSATs for now. I'm trying to support multiple units. The status can be pending, completed, or expired for an invoice. We can have a description. We can have a date, confirm that, and a date when the invoice expires. And then the timestamps here is just to basically add two more columns, updated at and created at. And what this will do is that every time I create a new invoice in the database, it just saves the time that it was created. And if I make a change, like when changing the status of an invoice from pending to completed or from pending to expired, then I will update that date. And then I have some like auditing that I can do, some auditing ability. What I'm not sure about is this pub key here. If it's the one thing that I want to use to like reference a name, like an identity being purchased, maybe pub key is not the thing that I want to have here. Maybe it's the reference ID. Let's see. Let's see, reference ID. Yeah, so I created an interface to basically, have all the information about one invoice, and I put that here in the was it base? No, in model. So it's this one, and I'm actually gonna call this payment hash. This is gonna be just amount. We have invoice status, we have unit, we have the time that when the invoice gets confirmed, we have the time when the invoice expires, and the created ad and updated ad, as I mentioned earlier. So basically, the invoice now can store all the information regarding this invoice. Now the pub key is tricky, right? We can't use the pub key to reference an invoice, and the reason for that is uh, when you are when you are buying something, I must be able to link it to not just your pub key, but also the name that you're buying. So I think it makes sense for us to just call this reference ID and just keep it like that. And then the reference ID can be any string. And what I could do with the reference ID is come up with some string like Camry at Nostr Land. And that will be like the Nipo 5. And I can put that on the invoice. And then whenever I get an invoice paid, I just look at the reference ID. And if it has the name and the domain, then I know that it's a payment for a particular user. The other thing is I could just use the ID as well, because it will be the same invoice for the same ID. Yeah, but the other thing is that may not be unique enough, because you may get an invoice to pay a name, but then change your mind as you're making the purchase, and then the invoice will expire. So then you come maybe 15 minutes after and you want to buy the same name again. You'll probably get a new invoice that you can pay. So yeah, reference ID is just something that when I'm looking at CBD dashboard, I could probably pinpoint which one is the invoice that I'm looking at. All right, so I have the invoice. I also need a repository for managing invoices. Or I already created it. Okay, did I implement this? Let's see, repositories. I have the invoice repository. No, I didn't implement it. So that was one of the things that I wanted to do the other day. So because we're generating an invoice on CBD, we also need to store it. So the function that we'll be implementing right now will be the create invoice function. And I'm just gonna move it all the way up. So I think that's much more important. One thing that every repository needs to be able to access to the database is always a database client. So I'm gonna inject it when the class gets created. So I'm gonna say private read-only DB client, and the DB client type is database client. And then with this, then I can say something like this dot DB client. I pass the type, which is DB invoice, which I think I need to update by the way. DB invoice. Then I have to pass the table name. So I think that I added a constant called tables, and in it I should be able to pick invoices. And I'm adding something, right? Like I'm creating an invoice from scratch. So I will say insert, and then I'm just gonna type row here because an invoice in memory is not the same as an invoice in the database. All right, sorry about that. I just got a notification. Because an invoice in memory is not the same as an invoice in the database. I need to make sure that I map this invoice to the row. So I'm gonna do that. So const row, and then the type of this row should be DB invoice. Okay. And then I need to set every field explicitly. Um, I think there's an issue with the DB invoice. I think it doesn't have the exact fields as invoice, so I need to go there and tweak that. So yeah, we don't have pub key anymore. This is called reference ID. Bolt 11 is actually called payment hash. Payment hash is more generic, and if tomorrow we're using Bolt 12, I don't need to rename it. We don't care about amount paid. We just care about the amount, and the status will let us know if it's paid. So we have the invoice status, we have the unit, confirm that. So everything else stays the same. Going back to the invoice repository, I'm gonna map each field explicitly. One thing that I like doing when copying things like that is just have the interface on my face so that I don't miss any fields. So I'm gonna copy all of this and put them here. And what I'm gonna do is say ID and then say invoice.id. And then reference ID is invoice.reference ID. Payment hash is gonna be invoice.payment hash. Yeah, wish I could do this faster, but we are live, so can't skip. Invoice.status. The unit is invoice.unit. Invoice.confirm that. Expires at will be invoice.expires at. And then created at that will be generated automatically. So I don't need to set them. So this is the row. The only problem is that because there's two fields that I'm not setting, it's going to complain and say that the type doesn't match because it's missing created at and updated at. But if I understand correctly, this insert here can accept a partial. So maybe I can just turn this into a partial type, and then it doesn't complain. There you go. Yeah, so this function returns Boolean if this insert was created. So the only thing that I need to do is after the insert happens, I can call, let's see, I can say this dot database client table insert row and then dot then, and then row count, and then return the row count. Which here it says it's an array of numbers, but actually it should be a number. Let's see. And then, yeah, we should get the row count. I'm actually gonna check how I'm doing it on Nostr because I think I just want to verify that this is correct. So when we insert using the library connects, This should work. The only issue is that insert allows you to insert more than one row at a time, and this function doesn't really know if you're inserting one or many. So that's why I need this function here. I can then await this and put a try catch. And if this happens successfully, let's see. I'm trying to find how do I create invoices on Nostr. So basically, yeah. So this is. So I need to extract a property from this result. So this is actually a, a result, and I have to say result dot row count. Um, yeah. So the types here are messed up. Maybe I need to, yeah, the client. It says that it doesn't exist on this type. However, I can just say that this is an object that has row count and has a number, right? Can I do this? Yeah, well, maybe it doesn't work like that. The other thing that I can do is just set this to any and continue on with my life. So this will return a number, and if the number is greater than one, sorry, greater than zero, or if it's exactly one, I think what that means is that I inserted the invoice successfully in the database. And then I can catch any errors that could happen when inserting this. I'm gonna log the error, unable to insert invoice, in never to insert invoice. And then I'm gonna log the invoice here. Or should I log? Yeah, let me log the row instead of the invoice, because that's what's going into the database. So unable to insert invoice, I log the row, and then I need to throw this error because I don't want to like the application to swallow the error. I want the application to know that something bad happened. So there you go. So now this will return true when the insert happens, and it will throw an error if it doesn't. Um, all right, so I have this function, and now, and I also have the CBD client which goes and creates the invoice. Now I need to tie all of this together. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a service that handles all the payments. So I'm gonna first define the type on how that's gonna work. Um, check real quick. So I'm gonna define the type on how this works by creating a new file here called services.ts, and I'm gonna call this services. Oh, sorry. I payment service or payments service, and then this interface, it's going to define one function that basically, one second. One single second. Yep. Okay. Going back to this. So this interface here will have a function that it's called create invoice, and it's gonna take it's gonna take the name of the user that you're trying to buy, and then it's also gonna take. Oh, hold on. I don't. No, it's gonna take an amount, which is gonna be a big int. It's gonna take a description for the invoice, It's going to take, what else do we need? So as an example, I can take a look at this. So amount, description, internal ID, and then I don't need to pass callback URL. So the internal ID is basically the name and the pub key. So I'm gonna call this name and pub key. Hey Angela,
Hi.
how are you doing?
Good. How are you? I'm awake after my nap.
Oh, you were napping. Well,
Yes.
continue sleeping. I mean,
No. Oh my god. Are you kidding me? Please. I was like wanting to get on those. Like, get up, get up, get up. There is work to be done, you know. So here
yeah,
we
for
are.
sure.
Here we are. How's it going?
Pretty good so far. So I created a class to save the invoice on the database. So we on our previous session we we wrote the code to actually go to CBD
Yeah.
and create the invoice there. But once we have an invoice, we have to save it in the database so that we can
Perfect.
keep track of the invoices. But now those are two separate things. Like there's one client that goes and talks to CBD, and there's one invoice repository that talks to the database. I need to tie them together. So now I'm writing something called the payments service, which
Awesome.
will do the two steps in a single operation.
Okay.
So
Cool.
I'm calling it payment service, and it only has one function: create invoice.
Yeah.
And you can give it the name of the name that you're buying, the pub key. Actually, I'm gonna add the domain here. The pub key of the user, the amount that needs to be paid, um, and I think the description. Maybe I could get rid of this because I just need an invoice for an amount with a description. Oh, actually, I need the reference ID, not to pass all these things. The reference ID. And the reference ID is gonna be a string. So
And this is
yeah,
great.
I'm gonna
And
call this. This is just like how it's gonna look like. It's not necessarily how it's implemented.
yeah,
So now I'm going to implement it. Now that I define what it's gonna look like, I can implement it. So I go now to. Well, I don't have a services folder, so I'm just gonna create it.
I'm going to look through that list too that Andre sent me earlier. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, he sent like a Dropbox file of the updated Eden and Pro Vita. So
All right.
we'll just knock that out.
Yeah. Knock it out of the park.
Yes, let's go.
All right. So now I'm going to be implementing. I don't need this anymore. Now we're going to be implementing the payment service. So the payment service needs two things. It needs. I need to inject um, the CBD client.
Okay.
So CBD client. Oh, hold on. Didn't I create an interface for this? Payment processor client. Okay, so this should be payment processor, and then this can be payment processor. So I don't need to mention CBD in this file. It's gonna be agnostic basically. Here in the constructor, I also need to inject the invoice repository so that I can save the invoice once I have it. And then this will be I invoice repository. I'm gonna. Why is it complaining? Because I haven't imported this. I really don't like this name. I'm gonna. Well, I can just add the I at the beginning so that I know that it is an interface. All right. So coming back to the payment service, now I can say something like try, and then with CBD, I create the invoice. So payment processor dot create invoice, and I have to pass a request to create the invoice. So I'm gonna create the request here, and then once I have the invoice, then I can save it on the database. So I can say, let's this returns the invoice, right? So I could just say here return invoice. But before I return it, I save it to the database. So this dot invoice repository create invoice, and then I pass the invoice directly. So I need to build a request. The request needs to be a create invoice request. And let me add the type create invoice request. And now I need to set all the values that are needed to create an invoice. So the amount, which is given here, the description, the reference ID, and then the unit. Do I need the unit? The unit is always going to be MSATs, right? Let me see, base, yeah, MSATs. So probably this should be invoice unit.msats instead of that. Create invoice request is complaining because I made it a number when it should have been an integer. So let me fix that. I think there's gonna be more errors. No. Then create invoice. I just passed the invoice that I just created from CBD to the create invoice repository, and it doesn't like it because I'm missing an await here. It says argument of type promise creating. Oh, I'm missing an await here. Yeah, so I need to wait for the CBD to return the invoice, and then I can create it here. Um, all right. So the response from create invoice is create invoice response, not exactly an invoice. So let's take a look at this create invoice response. So this is what it looks like, but an invoice is a completely different thing. Um, let's see, because maybe there's like a one-to-one correlation, and I could probably get rid of some of these interfaces. So if I go to model, there should be an invoice interface here where I can, yeah, so I have reference ID, I have amount, um, payment hash. It's missing here. Oh no, it's here. It's just not in the right, not in the same place. So I have amount, I have I have status, description. Let's see, am I missing description here? Yes. Yeah, so that those are the little things that you end up missing, and you end up like fighting with yourself for like an hour. Um, confirm that and expire that. Expires that. Confirm that. That looks good. Um, looks good to me. Let's go back to the service, to the payment service. So the payment service now, it's still complaining because the create invoice is missing, created out, updated out. Okay, so there's one thing. When creating the invoice, I should probably make that a partial, or maybe not a partial. It says that it's missing the created ad and updated ad, but I don't want to pass that. I want the invoice repository to automatically generate the create when the invoice was created and when the invoice was updated. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go to the interface for the invoice repository and make it accept a partial here. And let's see if that fixes it or it makes it worse. Oh, hold on. I still need to update. I just changed the interface. I need to change the repository as well. So here, I need to make this a partial so that it matches the interface. And maybe just make, no, still complaining. Oh, okay. So there's a mismatch on the types. Um, so this invoice here has a big int. Let me rename this file. There's a typo in it. Database. There's a mismatch. Where's the mismatch? Model. Amount is big int. Amount here is big int. Amount here is number. So this is the issue. Now I need to update all the places where it's expected to be there's an error somewhere. Oh, here. So this I don't need to do. So this mapping that I'm doing, I need to say big int to cast this amount that is coming from CBD into an amount. Now that I have this, hopefully this guy is not complaining. Oh, there you go. So it's working now. Um, Same issue with create invoice. It's okay. So because I create the invoice here on CBD, and then I save it to the database. But after I save it to the database, it has now a created ad and updated ad. So what I want the invoice repository to do is save it but return it back to me. However, if I do that, I need to once after I create the invoice, I need to map the fields back to I need to map the fields um, back to an invoice because what I'm gonna get back from the database is it's gonna be a DB invoice. So what I need to do here is change this so that I can say dot returning and then pass the asterisk here. And because I don't remember how this is done on Kinex, I'm just gonna go to the library and find this out. Yeah, so I can pass an array of the properties that are going to be returned. And then this is the object that I'm gonna get back. So, but it's gonna be, all right, it's gonna be an array. So if I use returning, then I cannot use this anymore. This is gonna be invoice here, or DB invoice, as you say, which I need to map here to something else. I need to change the type of this interface create invoice. Instead of being a Boolean, I'm gonna make it an invoice. So a full invoice. So you send a partial in, and you get a full invoice back. So because I did this mapping here at the beginning, I need to do the opposite now. So I was mapping from camel case to snake case. Now I need to do the inverse. It's tedious. I should probably have a utility function somewhere to do this, but just for the
But
sake of, yeah, go ahead.
oh no, no, go ahead.
If anyone's watching and has a question or something and wants to ask, just go ahead. So ID is gonna be db invoice.id. Reference ID is gonna be db invoice.reference ID. Payment hash is gonna be db invoice.payment underscore hash. Amount is gonna be db invoice.amount. I believe this is a string coming from the DB, but let's see. Status is gonna be db invoice.status. Unit, db invoice.unit. Description. Whoa, I don't have a description. That's messed up. That is messed up. So come in here. Yeah, I'm missing description. All right, so now I have a
A
description here.
good time of day, like to stream. You know, I mean, I like that we're doing like different times throughout the day because it's like it seems like some people stop on right now and dropping off, dropping on. It's good.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a good idea. Yeah. Otherwise, only some people at some time will be able to see what we're doing,
Mhm.
what we're building in Nostr Land.
Yeah.
All right, so this inserts the invoice. Once I get the invoice, I get the first one that comes back, which there should only be one. And then I map it to what it should look like, which is an invoice, not a DB invoice. And then once that's done, I should be able to just, what's it complaining here? Oh, because I need to update the interface. So this is not Boolean anymore. I'm returning an invoice. All right, that sounds good. Now I have the updated invoice here, but I don't need to await. I could just call this function at the very end, and I think that does it. I need to catch the error. If there's any errors creating the invoice or saving it to the database, I need to log the error and also bail out because yeah, I need to bail out. Let's see, because I won't be able to handle those. There's nothing I can do. I cannot recover. So I just log the error, and then hopefully we figure out what the hell was wrong. Maybe CBD. is timing out, or maybe I don't have a connection to CBD, or maybe the database is down, or I don't have, or anything can happen when you have a server and it's trying to reach out to other systems.
Yeah.
So
Do you want me to write Andre? Do
sorry.
you want me to write Andre, or are we good? Like, is there? Do you have a question? Do we have a question for Andre about CBD or?
No, no.
Oh, okay.
I'm just explaining that it could happen that there's an issue between us and CBD that prevents us from creating invoices.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, then this will catch those errors, log them to the console, and then what that'll do is help us debug what the issue is. So I'm
Perfect.
gonna log the invoice, and I'm also gonna log the error. Oh wait, hold on. So this function create invoice takes accepts a reference ID, the amount, and description. Unable to create invoice for. Then I'm gonna pass reference ID, amount, and the description, and then the error. All right. So I throw the error. This function basically does everything for me. It creates the invoice and it uses the payment repository. Sorry, the payment processor and the invoice repository. So now that I have this, I can now add an endpoint that will handle this call. And what I want to do is call the endpoint and return the payment hash, which is the QR code that people see on the screen. But I'm not going to render a QR code. I'm just going to return what is inside the QR code, which everyone knows is the ln URL whatever string that people usually see. So let me do that. In the routes, I need to add a new route. Let me see if I have one already. Yeah, it will be this one. So it's the post invoices controller. So I'm gonna go there, and it doesn't do anything. I need to implement this. Let me see. So coming here, handle request. Let's see. So the way we're going to be passing the name, the domain, and all that stuff, um, we did that for the request that gets you the cost for the name. So once you know how much it's going to cost you, you don't need to send that back to us. You just need to send the name and the domain, and we'll send you an invoice. So what I'm going to do is just grab from the request body. I'm going to grab the name that you want, and I'm gonna default it to undefined if you didn't pass it, and the domain. And because I already have some validation for these two fields, I'm going to just copy it from the other. Where did I put it? From here, because I'm lazy. And going back to post invoice, space that here. It doesn't like that I don't have base send bad request because I need to make this controller. Um, I need to make it extend the base controller, which has that function. So it's a matter of me adding this to it. And now that the post invoices controller extends the base controller, I have access to that function. And now I have validation basically. So let's check if the validation is correct. So if the domain that the user passes is not a string, or if the domain is empty, or if the domain is greater than 24, we just say invalid domain. Okay. And then if the name given is not a string, or if it's less or equal to 2 characters, we're not going to allow anyone to buy um, 2 character names, or the name doesn't match the allowed characters as per the NIPO 5 product NIP. Well, NIPO 5 NIP doesn't make sense, but you get it, right? Like the document that explains how NIPO 5 should work. If it doesn't match then we also tell the user that it's an invalid name. All right, so now that we've validated those two fields, we can go ahead and create an invoice on CBD. So I will save the invoice in this variable invoice, and then call the payment. Okay, so I need to I need to inject the payment service to the post invoices controller. So I'm gonna do that now. Public constructor, um, private read only payments service, and then I have to use the payment service interface to do this. Um, why don't you like me? Okay, it's missing the super call. All right, so now I can say this dot payment service dot create invoice, and then I can pass the reference ID, amount, and description ID. So let's set those values. So I don't have the amount. To get the amount, I need to calculate, the same thing that we did earlier. But because I don't want to copy all that code from post name. Let me get rid of this. Yeah, so here's how I did it. Like I grabbed the field from the database. Actually, you know what? Maybe the payment service does this for me. No, I'll keep it separate because maybe I want to pay something that's not a name with this. Maybe it's something else. Maybe I want to let you um change your name. Like maybe you bought one name and then you change your mind and you want to change it, and then if I bind it to some fee or something, maybe that won't work. Okay, so all this code here can be turned into a function that returns the amount, basically. So let me see how I can do this. Refactor. Can I do this? No. All right. Well, I'll just copy everything here and hmm. Or maybe this is the code that I need to turn into. I need to refactor. Extract to method in class. Extract to inner function in method. Yeah, inner function. Let's do inner function. And then what this is gonna be called is calculate fee amount. Oh, sorry, calculate amount from fee. And then fee is a parameter that gets passed to this. So I need to pass the fee. And then this function, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take it away from this file and put it as a utility so that it can be reused. So I'm gonna create a utility called fees. And then this function here, I export it. Oh, okay. So there's something else that needs to be passed to this function. It's also the name length. I don't need the name. I need the name length. So
And there's a
okay.
question from Jess that says, like, this might be from a little bit ago. It's from YouTube. It says, for domain validation, does it need to be unique?
Yeah. So I'm gonna make it so that um I mean, if we have 5 domains and you want to buy the same name on 5 domains and those 5 domains that we offer, then yes, you will be able to do that. Um, what we're gonna do is on the database ensure that uniqueness. So I think that we're not doing that yet. We may need to add a migration to make those two fields unique. Let's see how we can do that. So I have here the let's see. So this is the identities table, and I have the name and pub key, but I don't have the domain. That's a mistake. We haven't inserted any identity with the service yet, so I could just clear the database. So I will add the domain, and yeah, this is not unique anymore. And then not nullable. And now I need to add a unique domain. But because I don't remember, um, let's look at the documentation for Connects to actually build unique indexes. So They have a query builder, but they also have a schema builder, I think. Schema builder. Then the schema builder, let's find indexes. Let's see, so you just call table dot index and then pass the columns that belong to that index. Let's see if there's an example for unique. Oh, I could just say dot unique, and it will add. Yeah, it will make them all unique. So let's do that. So I could just say dot unique. I think that will work. And then pass an array of name and domain. So now this will be unique. So thanks, Jeff, for pointing that out. Now the name and domain have to be unique, not just the name, because previously, it was one name for all the domains. Uh, yeah, I don't know if this is going to work. Let's give it a try. So npm db. Oh, I don't have a command to roll back, so I need to add one. So this is the command to migrate up, and this one is to migrate down. Then npm run db migrate down. Oh, that's not gonna work. Oh, it did. Okay, so all the migrations have been removed from the database. I'm gonna run them all now. db migrate up. Ooh, doesn't like that I put unique at the end. That's fine. We can fix this. I think what I have to do is let's say looking at the documentation. Unique. What happened? Unique. It's alter table. What I need to do. So this returns a promise. So I need to do two things in this. Hmm. Or I could just write a new migration that makes these unique, and then I keep this
Yeah, he
simple.
says, yeah, basically I'm thinking there needs to be a check that the username someone wants isn't already taken.
Yeah. So we did that on to check the name if it's available, and if it's available, then we'll let you buy it. But I guess your point. I think we also need to do a check right before we make the purchase. Once we um before we even give you an invoice. But let's see. If two users are trying to buy the same name at the same time, they could, because what's going to happen is I'm going to go to the database, check for uniqueness, generate an invoice, and then insert that into the database. Um, let's see. Two users can come to the service and try to go for the same name, and they apply at the same time, and they both get an invoice, right? Nothing prevents that, because right now there's no one that has purchased it. You can get an invoice for anything, and then one user takes a minute to pay the invoice, and the other one pays it right away. Now, the user that takes a minute, um, they will have paid the invoice, but then um, cannot buy. So maybe the trick here is that if there is an invoice already generated for a specific name and it hasn't expired, then that's unique, if that makes sense. So the expiry has to be. I don't know if this is gonna work, because I don't know if I can check on an index um, if the time is between now and the expiry of the invoice. So you kind of need like a booking system where you reserve the name for the first user, and then if another user comes in and tries to get an invoice, they won't be able to for a little while, until the invoice for the first user that attempted to buy this name has expired. So basically, If our user already generated an invoice, we shouldn't let any other user generate another invoice, and that will prevent the double spend. But we cannot use dates for this, because if we use dates, then yeah, we can't say, oh, check now. It has to be, then it will have to, we need a maintenance job, like a background job that will go in and delete the invoice once it's expired. um I'd rather not do that. Okay, well, I don't want to solve the double spend problem right now. It's definitely possible that two users can, and even the same user could get two different invoices and pay both for the same thing. We could probably deal with that manually. Like the user will come to us, because it's happened already on Nostream. The user can come back and say, "Hey, I paid for this twice," and we just reimburse them once we look at the logs and see that this happened. The problem is more pronounced when two users are like going for the same name. That's when the issue may arise. But yeah, we don't need to solve it right now, but it's a problem that needs to be solved. I'm just gonna add it as like a to do. Oh, sorry, I need to make this big because otherwise the screen is like hard to work with. The other way that I could do this is by using a Redis and a lock. So when the user tries to buy this, creates this invoice, then I create a lock for a certain time, and once the lock expires, then someone else can generate another invoice.
And then
Uh,
Jeff is acknowledging, yeah, that's a tricky edge case.
yeah, yeah, no, it is indeed, because of the asynchronous nature of getting an invoice and then paying it. On the internet, if you're doing a line on a supermarket and there's only one cashier, then only that the person that is in front will be the one buying the thing. And like today, this happened to me. I was buying some croissants, and then there were some people behind me that they wanted the exact same thing that I wanted, but there was only one left. So I bought them, and I heard their oh, so sad for them. But I was there first. Um, yeah. So I'll put here. I put this here so that I don't forget. But it's definitely an edge case that could definitely happen. Yeah, and the uniqueness on the table will help, but it won't solve the double spend problem. And the double spend problem is basically the affected one is the user, not like the user that came last, not us, because we're just gonna get the money. Now we have money that we owe them because we didn't give them the service, and there's a difference. Another way that we could do is the user, when they're signing up for the service, they have to type in their lightning address. So if we need to reimburse them, then we could just do that. We could just use the lightning address. Or if they put in their pop key and they have the lightning address already set up on their profile, we can just send them a reimbursement, and like send them a message saying them, hey, someone bought this name before you did. We are reimbursing you what you paid. Uh, yeah, we could do something like that. The other thing is, yeah, that's the thing with invoices. Once the invoice gets created, anyone can pay it. There's nothing we cannot stop the payment from going through. Maybe CBD lets us cancel an invoice after it's been created. I've never checked for that. No, I don't think so. You create a charge and you get the charge details. I will ask Andre, if we could do that, but that doesn't solve the problem completely either, because between the time that I cancel the invoice and someone could still pay it, so it's not a 100% flawless solution. All right, so I do want to add the uniqueness on the identities table for name and domain, and I think I could probably do it by just saying table dot unique and then passing here name and domain. So at least on the database there won't be any inconsistencies. The only inconsistency will be um, when paying invoices. Okay, so let's run the migrations up again. That worked. That worked. Oh, error. Okay, let's see. So there's an issue with this. Let's see. All right, so we cannot default to setting the ID of the invoice. I'm just gonna remove this code here, and I think that will fix it. All right. So we should have the invoices table on the database now. So refresh here. Yep, there you go. We have the invoices. We have all the columns. Reference ID, payment hatch, amount, unit status, description. Pretty nice. All right. Going back to the post invoices, I created a function that calculates the amount, but I don't think I finished it. Let's see. Yeah, I need to pass the name length here. So this becomes this. So what this function is doing is calculating the name based on the name length and the fee from the database. So because I know some people were not here when I implemented this. Um, the idea is that we have a different price depending on the length. And the way I'm setting this up as an example is that if your name is 3 characters long, then it's worth 60,000 satoshis. So that means if you want a really short name, then you pay a premium for that name. Um, as the length of your name starts getting longer, then you pay less and less and less and less linearly. This could have been any other function, but I think linearly just works and people can understand it. So 60,000 if it's 3 characters, and then it starts going down until it's 8 characters long, which then you only pay 6,000 satoshis. And again, these numbers, I just made them up. They're not really, um, they don't really need to be these numbers. So once you get past 8 characters, I keep it 6,000. Like it becomes like a constant line, a horizontal line. So even if your name is like 10 characters long, you're still gonna be paying 6,000. So this is just the max and this is the minimum. And because you can't create names that are 2 characters long, this is not really part of the equation. You cannot really pay more than 60,000. So yeah, and what we do here, so we calculate that slope that you see here, and we multiply times the length of the name, and we add the y-intercept. So we add when x equals 0, this value here, we need to add it to the function, which is like 90,000 something for this particular slope. So that's what we do. We get the fee from the database and then we compute what the amount's going to be. This here could just be these numbers. So length here is x, slope is m, and b is the y-intercept. And this is the y-mx equals, sorry, y equals mx. I guess people see it this way usually. Mx, m times x plus b formula that we see for linear functions. Yeah, we are doing math. Let's see here. Post name controller. We calculate them. Oh yeah, I need to pass the name, the length name, and I also have to do it for the post invoices controller. Calculate amount fee, name length, and then the fee from the database, which I haven't fetched here. So const fee. Okay, so I'm gonna need the fee repository here. So looks like there's an issue paying for Eden. Let's see. Yeah, so Andre is telling me that there's a bug with paying invoices on Pura Vida, uh, Milu, and I don't know what else. So I guess he updated to the latest version, but he didn't update to the last release. Yeah. All right. So coming back to this, I'm gonna inject the fee repository to the post invoices controller so that now I can get the fee. So await this dot fee repository dot create in. Oh, hold on. It's not create invoice. I need to get the fee. Oh, did I put the wrong type? It totally did. It's e fee repository. What the hell? Fee repository dot find fee by domain, and then I pass the domain. All right, so I got the fee here. I pass it to this function along with the length of the name. This gets me back the amount that I need to invoice the user. And then I'm going to, hold on. This returns a number when it should be a big int. Let's fix that. So I'm gonna turn this into big int. Oh, yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah, so I get the short name, all that stuff, calculate all this, turn it into a big int. Then if I go back to the other file, now amount should be big int. And create invoice needs a reference ID, an amount, and a description. So let's just come up with the description for these invoices. So the description is going to be, um, so this will, the user will see if they were to pay the payment, if they were to paste the payment hash, for example, on CBD, on Damus, or I think Amethyst or Astral Ninja. So this needs to be something that is human readable. Um, so payment, sorry, pay for, and then the name of the user at domain, pay to purchase Nepo 5, pay to purchase Nepo 5. I think that's good enough, right? I don't think we need anything else for the description. As for the reference ID, I think it's also going to be a string. Pay to purchase name, right? And then I can say here the pub key. But wait a minute, I haven't been passing the pub key anywhere. I think I need to pass it here. So it must come with the request. All right, so the pub key needs to be either npub or hex. Okay, so that's a doozy. Yeah, I have some code to actually convert the pub key between Beck and Beck32, which is what people call npubs. But first, let's make sure that we did get a pub key. So if it's not a string, or if the pub key is empty, I guess. Well, maybe I don't need this. If it's not a string, just return and then send that you send an invalid pub key. All right. The other checks that we need to do are gonna be more around the whether it's a hex key or something else. And actually, I think I will need to take a break to actually have dinner. So we may have to come back to this.
Dinner break.
Yay!
Sounds good.
All right, everyone. I'm gonna end the broadcast here. I hope you learn a thing or two, and maybe be a little bit more inspired to building something like this, an identity service. Thanks, Angela, for everything. Thanks, Jeff, for your comments. Um, I will continue this at a later time. And yeah, now it's
Uh,
a good time. We actually spent an hour, so
that's
that's
perfect.
always a good time to finish a
Yeah, yeah.
broadcast.
All right, we will talk soon.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a good one.
Bye.